Welcome back to ProBuild 360 TV and welcome to the On-Site podcast. We're here today with Sam Davey-Jones, who's a lecturer in architecture at Wolverhampton University. So Sam, would you like to tell us a bit about yourself, about your love for architecture, what interests you and your experience in industry and in academia, please?
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me over here. It's been really interesting to see where you're based.
Yeah.
So I'm an architect, registered in 2016. So that's coming up to 8 years that I've been registered. Mm-hmm. Got my qualification in London, but moved up actually the year I registered, and I've been in the Midlands.
Ever since?
Oh,
that's good.
Absolutely. So definitely an adoptive son now.
Yeah.
Yeah, proud of being
so you're not from the Midlands originally?
No, not originally, no.
Okay.
No. So I grew up on the south coast.
Oh, lovely.
Fell in love with London as a teenager, decided that was the only place I wanted to study. Fairly quickly fell out of love with it, and so spent the rest of my career on
Tell
my
us
way
about
out.
that London love affair.
It was all about the glitz. It was about music. For me, it was about the music that I was hearing coming out of the capital, which is ironic because anyone who knows me now knows that I'm not into that, into the shiny bling stuff so much anymore. But it was about that creative environment that I thought I could be part of there.
Yeah, and then to the Midlands, into industry.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so practice over in Digbeth took me on. And I was there for a good few years.
Were you working mainly on residential or
Primarily, yeah.
Okay.
And that was my choice. So I always wanted to be based.
Love homes.
Yes,
Cool.
Exactly. And I did.
We do too.
Excellent. I did. Focused on the concept of dwelling as part of my masters. So I made it my focus as well. Yeah.
Oh, tell us about that then. So, doing the concept of dwelling, what does it mean at its most fundamental to you?
It's that sense of home. It is being able to take your socks and shoes off and actually be at home as a human being. So it's fundamental to the idea of meaning as a human being.
Yeah, it's a sanctuary.
Yes, precisely.
If all the world's a stage, home is backstage. I mean, you can take the mask off.
That's the one. That's Shakespeare.
I like that. Yeah, that's right. Were you mainly working on individual properties, or was it developments, or both? Or
it was a mixture of both. So certainly when I was in London, fairly typically, I was in a practice in Shoreditch. We were doing one-off homes. Big refurbishments of large, 1800s, late 1800s. Terminology, precisely.
Townhouses?
Townhouses.
Yeah,
Thank you, precisely, yeah, you got it.
Yeah, they are lovely properties in London. I mean, we were talking before about the terraces of Regent's Park.
Yeah.
John Nash, who designed Regent's Park, and you think of terrace houses as, because in the Midlands and the North, they were a solution for growing population, growing industry and so on. It's a working class solution, but in the southeast, terrace houses are like mini mansions, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Incredible properties.
Yeah, and so it was that type that I was doing in London.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So refurbishment. So tell me about then, as an architect, what's involved there? Because people think of architecture, external walls, like specifying external walls, what bricks to use, the style of those things. And if the property's already there, what's the effort that's going in? Is it mainly to do with services and the distribution of electrics and plumbing and heating and so on? Or
so that's always part of our role, and I think actually on the smaller projects, the more intimate projects that you do for, the one-off clients, that is absolutely essential. But no, largely it's about the looks, the finishes, the materials, the floor finish, wall colour, wall choice, tiles,
Lovely.
Lighting and so forth.
Okay.
So there's a lot of that as well.
There's a discussion in architecture and in other disciplines around the tug of war between function and form. The late Roger Scruton was a big advocate for the importance of beauty. So what you're talking about sounds like quite an aesthetic thing, whereas a lot of architects, particularly sort of like your brutalist style and these kind of things, it's like function, and everything else is wasted time and money. So where would you put yourself on that spectrum?
Funnily enough, absolutely a mix of both. So
think it's important to do that.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain at some point it was a Star Trek character who said only a Sith believes in binaries.
I love that. Yeah, that's brilliant.
I'll pause and do that again. So if you want to remove the Star Wars reference, you can.
You're right.
Essentially, reducing an argument down to binaries isn't useful. There's plenty of discussion about how actually, by creating a divisive conversation, actually you're moving it away from reality. You're dividing people, and in actual fact, the best way to go is something that's a combination. It's a mixture of both, and so naturally it has to function as a home.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, then it's already failed. So that's the magic of being an architect.
Yes,
you
yes,
have
it is.
to almost make the function seem seamless, and then the aesthetics is what you're doing to provide meaning for your clients, and it's without that meaning that lies between them. So you've got it. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a lovely way to look at it. I suppose that quite nicely brings us onto a conversation around sustainability, because when we've spoken before, and I asked you what sort of sets you on fire about your discipline, sustainability came to mind.
Absolutely.
And I think that we were talking before this to sort of the politicization of the conversation around sustainability leads it to be, it can become obstructive to the continuation of business, because policies that are put forward are ill thought through, not even feasible at some things, and possibly don't even address the very thing that they're marketed to address. What your vision of sustainability is, when you muse on that for a moment for us.
Thank you. It's something you have to bring everybody along for the ride. Otherwise, it's not going to work. If you can't make it for everybody, then you've already failed. You can't force that down people's throats, and that means that you have to work on getting that consensus. Happy to keep going. So,
please do.
There is a famous cartoon that says, what if all of the science is overwhelming, and we can see it out there every day. So you don't have to go out and look for the studies and the reports if you don't want to, because you can see it with your own eyes. Yes. But the point that I'm trying to get to on that is, if we do build a better world, and it was all a mistake, it would not have worked if we haven't actually managed to make it consensual and bring along everybody at the same time. So we do have to work together to actually achieve that. That's
such a lovely way to put it. I try to think about architecture. I think that it's such an important discipline because it affects everyone, that it is a philosophy.
Yes.
And if you think about Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, it's the same principle. Is if you can't build it for everyone, or you can't bring everyone along for the ride, it's not sustainable, it's not right, and it's probably not. It shouldn't be considered a fundamental. Same thing. It's if you wouldn't do it, if you wouldn't recommend anyone at any time to do that, then don't do it yourself. Don't think that. Don't say that.
Precisely.
That's a lovely way to think about sustainability.
Definitely, you need that social sustainability. You absolutely do. Yeah, because everybody's going to have to build the world that we're looking to occupy in the next few years.
And my big thing that I keep coming to when I think about these things is localisation.
Yes.
People, they talk about sort of these 15-minute cities and so on, and I find the idea of that lovely, in this sort of utopian way, but then the way that it's being prescribed politically to be awful.
Okay.
With things like ULEZ and the way that they're trying to force change.
Okay.
Not in a healthy way in my eyes, but rather to provide everything that people need to be happy locally, and allow it to change because you've done things right. That's the way to do it, I would say.
So let's throw some narrative in there. I can see somebody who's working for the gig economy, hand to mouth, 0 hours contract. They've got a car, it's worth 600 quid. But they couldn't buy it again because actually it's gone up to 1,200, because actually the second-hand car market's gone crazy for various reasons.
Yeah.
They are struggling to make ends meet. They need that car. They need that journey time.
Yeah.
And so anything that then stands in their way, and they're already at the bottom scrabbling to survive.
It writes life off for them. They're
Absolutely.
Can't do anything.
So let's go back and jump in with another story.
Yeah.
This one is from my own parents. They grew up in the 60s and 70s, so not even a long time ago.
Yep.
They lived in the 15-minute city. It's something that we had just a generation ago.
Yes.
And actually has been, through various forces, disappeared. Okay, and so I think that's something to look at.
Consumerism, maybe.
Yeah, I'm glad you volunteered that one, because that's exactly what I'd have said. Yeah, definitely. So we have this. There's a little cycle that I think that we've been trapped into that actually didn't exist in the 60s and 70s to the same degree. My grandmother used to do the shopping for that day, and she was able to walk round the corner to the high street and get everything she needed for that day. But equally, my grandparents lived in a situation where only one adult had to work.
Yes.
And that adult was remunerated for their labour to the extent that they could support the rest of the family.
Well, when you picture sort of like the absolute idealistic vision of, you know, life in a developed Western country, you think of like, you know, California in the 50s.
Okay.
And you think about sort of, you know, dad going off to work, mum raising the kids, cooking and looking after the home, and you know, not saying anything about gender roles or anything. I don't want to get cancelled, but that seems like a healthy existence. Yeah.
So I mean that ideal doesn't have to be either one of those genders. It doesn't have to be any gender. It can be two adults.
It shouldn't take everyone's 100% of their heart and soul to scrape by.
No.
Because then anything that tips you over the edge, whether it be there's an illness or there's you know, some kind of external impact, you're all done for.
Precisely. It's so fragile, and we're at the point where it's 20
Breaking
quid either
point.
way. Exactly.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, especially when it comes to, you know, childcare, food costs, fuel costs. Absolutely. And so I think at some point half of the market, half of the adult labour's value has been taken from the market in just 25 years, maybe 50. So I think that's a very good thing to acknowledge, and I'm really pleased that we're able to talk about it.
Yeah. And I think that if local communities were designed in a way that if you came across those hard times, there was everything around you that was necessary to at least survive and ride out those hard times. The security, the emotional security that would give you it's immense.
I've seen it actually.
Really?
On my walk here today.
Really? Go on, tell us.
So we're obviously in Nechells. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Got you. I actually learnt to drive here.
Yes, so did I.
Which is extraordinary. So I didn't need to learn to drive until I moved up. So it was 2016, big year, qualified, got a new job, bought a house, learned to drive. And so I actually know the area really well. And there's a certain level of deprivation and poverty here.
Yeah, there really
There's a lot of people out of work. But I could see the community. There's groups stood out talking to each other.
That's right.
Mixed. There's English. There's other languages.
The top of the road here, you've got the pharmacy, you've got the convenience store, you've got the chip shop, and all that stuff. And you know that. I mean, that's how it used to be, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that. I mean, that's still there. Like every little area has its like little high street.
Yeah.
But I think the difference is about what provisions are made for the people in the communities.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when my parents were part of that existence, unfortunately due to unemployment in the 80s and 90s, they had support. There was support from the state that actually engendered those communities, and they had each other.
Yes.
My parents weren't paying basically their salary for my childcare because they were taking it in turns as neighbours to actually look after each other's kids so they could have that livelihood.
Yeah.
And I think
my grandmother brought up countless children as well as my mum and my uncle.
Absolutely.
Brought up so many children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if people had the freedom for that model rather than it being a necessity. So in spite of every challenge, they were actually doing it because of the values that it brings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing is trust. Mm-hmm. If there's trust in the community,
Certainly.
which comes from a shared set of values, which would in turn lower crime and make everyone more trustworthy, and then you can rely on your fellow human being. The other thing is about wasted effort. And again, this for me, it comes from that comes from politics and bureaucracy, and large administrative government that's always just trying to come up with these big clever policies and so on. Let's bring it back to the conversation around the next crop of architects, and how to ensure that sort of like wasted effort in terms of designs and redesigns and having a lean construction process rather than a inefficient one. How do you see the next crop? What are you seeing? Are you hopeful? Are you fearful?
Oh, no, I'm certainly hopeful. So I'm just going to come back to that one about the next crop of architects. Just because I wanted to just partially address what you said about big government policy. So I think that absolutely there is a space for policy, but it should be policy that's been created with people.
So grassroots policies.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm not making a judgment about whether or not we need big government, lean government. I think we need our government, and by the time it's actually a government that's working for the people, that is made by the people, then you've got your solution. There are plenty of good policies which have worked in the past, which have been top down, that have actually been able to support communities. So
do you have anything in mind? Is there a particular period or a particular even like individual politician or anyone that you admire from the past that you think that things could be brought back or learnt from?
I can't think of an ideal time in history.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think it has generally been a struggle. I think that scale is a big issue. I think that once upon a time there was a move to this idea that actually there could be a unified globe, and I think that's still something that humanity will need to work towards. But I think that there has to be local autonomy.
Yes,
I think that
have you ever heard of Jacques Fresco?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Jacques Fresco is I think he's described as a futurist. But his discipline is in architecture and town planning. And he has these incredible like actual, scale models that he builds of what a ultra sustainable city might look like.
Understood.
And it almost looked like Atlantis or something. They're all in concentric circles, and it's all part land and part water, and these incredible things. And I mean, it's maybe a little far out to think that we could be there, but I'm ambitious.
So absolutely, I think that we need those ambitions, and the next crop have to dream big, and that's what we do as architectural educators, and that's what I was encouraged to be, and I think that's why I am where I am now, is because I have been allowed to imagine. I think that by the time we start making idealistic plans and start going top down, then we do start to struggle again, because I think that that sustainable utopia is possible, despite the utopian label, but it has to be communities creating it for themselves.
That's so true.
Yeah. And I think that there is probably a nice mix somewhere that is slightly messy, slightly chaotic, that is community-led, that is sustainable because people are giving the space and the time to repair their own things, grow their own things. And actually it's going to be fairly agrarian. Everybody's going to have those skills and those crafts. If that makes sense.
I think there's a great awakening happening at the moment in terms of, I mean, I'm constantly getting things popping up on my phone about like guides to off-grid, food growing and all sorts of things. And you see, social media pages and stuff that are all, people that have just, bought a homestead and living off the land and so on. I think it's amazing.
I do too, and I think there's something that is really important about this, and that means that we are going to have to strive for more time, but less in terms of what it is that we're taught that we want. I'm not articulating this particularly well.
No, please explain.
But it's a lower energy lifestyle.
Yes, that's what.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a perfect way to say it.
You're not aspiring for a car. We were going for form and function.
Yeah.
I shouldn't aspire for a particular product. I just need occasionally to be able to use a vehicle a couple of times a week to go and do a journey that otherwise I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
So I don't need my own vehicle.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the status. And that goes for clothes and vehicles and other consumerist stuff, as you said already, that we're being taught that we want and we don't.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. It's been really useful to share that experience.
I hope anyone watching and listening would have enhanced their experience and or knowledge or something good comes to them from it.
Hopefully too, yeah.
There you go.
Awesome.
Nice one, bud.
All right.
See you soon.
Thank you.